I am Marc Silber. I'm a published photographer. I've published 4 books. Let me introduce you to an old friend of mine. Our guest, Felix Kunze, is a portrait photographer. His recent projects include a focus on scientists, explorers, environmentalists to elevate their standing in society through photographs. Felix, it's so great to have you on Advancing Your Photography. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Mark.
What are the key things that you use every time you pick up a camera or even before you pick up one?
I used to shoot a lot of concert photography and for Getty Images back in the day, and I'd go to to concerts, and you get kind of penned into a press pit with 20 other photographers, and you're allowed to photograph during the first 3 songs that an artist performs.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're all taking the same picture. When you have 20 people photographing from a 5 by 5 box, you're gonna get 20 of the same pictures. I started really looking for portrait subjects because I felt like people were the most diverse subject to photograph in the world. If you send 1,000 photographers to photograph one person, they could come away with 1,000 different pictures that each tell a different story about that person.
Right.
And because people are so multifaceted, you can get so many different results from photographing the same person over and over. So the first thing I really look for is always going to be from that economics perspective. Is this picture that I'm going to take gonna move the needle for me personally? Is it going to move the needle for anybody else? Is this an interesting subject that I want to photograph or that someone else wants to see? That's kind of like step zero.
Because you're finding what catches your eye, right? First of all.
Right. And it's a really hard thing because the people have asked me a lot, how do you develop a photographic style? And it's a really hard question to answer until I realized you just need to shoot a lot. And when you get to that stage where you're shooting so much either personal work or commissions that you don't get to choose what you're shooting, you're just trying to carry on each day, going from one thing, from one flight to this place. That is when you really find out what your style is, because you don't have a choice but to do just what comes from the heart. And we have to remember why we get into photography in the first place. It's an artistic pursuit. A lot of people, I came from a different career into photography, and for me it was about freedom, and it was about creativity, and it was about communicating more with the world, having more to put out there for people to see of how I see the world.
Definitely.
And that's been as much beneficial to me as anyone that sees the work I do or any of my clients. Because communication can be difficult, and photography is essentially communication, and it kind of solves a problem of communicating how you see the world. And if you forget that, then we're getting lost in technicality and things like that, and we have to be true to kind of the things we're interested in.
Let's dive into some of your images. This is a well-known figure. This is Dr. Mike.
Dr. Mike, and currently he's doing a lot of, he's a real doctor. He practices in New Jersey, and he's been talking a lot about COVID-19 and kind of trying to stop the spread of misinformation.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show this picture because I give photographers the tip, we talked about like finding what you're interested in and doing personal work. So work that you do not for money, that you can show to clients that then go, oh, I would love to hire you for this. And doing personal work, clients have a hard time choosing a photographer. And if you've ever hired a plumber or anyone, any tradesperson, you want to know that they can do the job. So for photographers, it's the same thing. If I'm the client and I want to hire somebody, I need to see that the photographer has done the work that I want them to hire them for. So no one's going to hire you for work you've never shot.
Right.
So I got asked to photograph Dr. Mike for Stand Up to Cancer. It's a cancer charity. And they asked me to shoot him on white so that they could do a cutout for their social media. And I was like, okay, of course I can shoot on white, but it's very boring. It's not going into my portfolio.
Yeah.
So we did the shoot on white, and we were already packing up, and I got on really well with Mike. He's a great guy. But it was my first ever shoot. And then I just was like, I want to do something that is more me. I want to do something for him. He's a doctor doing good things. Let me make a picture that is more my style. and I'd brought this backdrop and I set it up. And if you just peek at the edges, you can sort of see he's in the hospital where he works. But we weren't in the room where he works. We weren't allowed to go into patient areas because of confidentiality, of course. So I didn't want to make a picture in the hospital directly, but we can have a little hint of something going on in the background. And then I lit it the way that I would light it, and I let a little bit of the ambient light, the light that's already around.
I was going to say, it's always tricky with fluorescent lights, and you have the fluorescent light behind him. Of course, very little of that. Well, I don't know. Was there fluorescent light also overhead as well?
Yeah. So I don't recall, but obviously there's a fluorescent light right above the top of the frame.
Yeah, exactly.
So with fluorescent light, I bring my shutter down to quite slow, like 1/90th or 1/60th of a second. And that's because fluorescent light flickers.
Yeah.
And the camera will pick up the flicker, and it can look really horrible, like your white balance jumps between the two flickers that the fluorescent light does. So if you leave your shutter open long enough, you catch both flickers in one exposure, right?
Good.
So I had to ask him to hold still, and I had to hold still. So I took this picture, and then we parted ways, and then it took me ages to retouch it because I had to deliver the pictures on white right away to the client, and this was personal work just for me.
Right.
But once I did, Dr. Mike on the spot hired me, and I've done 10 shoots for him since then, and he's become one of my absolute best clients, and he's a fantastic person.
That is really something.
I included this picture because that is the key. Anyone that's trying to get work, you got to solve two problems. Getting agents, doing ads, blah, 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 it's all nonsense until you figure out what you are interested in and start photographing that. And the thing is, when you have a subject that you're interested in, whether it's animals or elephant conservation or environmentalism or scientists, you will be better at photographing that than someone who's not interested, who's technically very proficient, because you know something about the subject. If you can solve that, then start photographing the people in the industry that you want to get into, and you will, by word of mouth, get hired.
Boy, that's an incredible tip, Felix. Okay, the next one, phenomenal photograph of the surviving astronauts.
So this picture is 8 of the 11 surviving Apollo astronauts that exist. So I've photographed 9 as of 2019 of the surviving Apollo astronauts that are on the planet through the Explorers Club. Now, this picture went absolutely viral all over the place. But what I love about it is it's that, the lighting class I made, called the Lighting Series, was made in conjunction with a photographer called Sue Bryce. And I've learned, and portrait photographers will know who Sue Bryce is. And something that Sue always says, and she has a similar kind of thing about personal work, is serve your community, give your community something, keep giving, and you'll get something back. And so when I started photographing the Explorers Club annual dinner, they have it in different venues around New York City. The first year I did it was at the Museum of Natural History. I photographed Neil deGrasse Tyson, who was a guest speaker at that time. I had my head in my hands because it was something that I was doing for the club, but it was costing me a fair amount of money to bring all the equipment there, to hire crew, to do the lighting, to do the backdrops. But it was a trust relationship I built with the Explorers Club. And over the years, each year, I kind of do a bigger production, and I give the images that I photograph to the club to use freely.
Nice.
As a way to serve that community. And it's that conversation that I had with myself with, my career is never going to be as big as Buzz Aldrin. My career is never going to be as big as no photographers is, and I'm completely okay with that. But what I can do is push power to those people through what I do. So
Fantastic.
The club had all these astronauts at their annual dinner, and as you can imagine, it was absolute mayhem. They were so in demand. A riot. And then 1,800 people at this dinner, and I'm tucked away. It was at the Marriott on Times Square. I'm tucked away in a little corner where I've squeezed in a photo booth. And I worked with, it was quite a Herculean effort to get to photograph all of these guys. I will say this is a composite because it was just, they were all there at the same time, but getting them all into the studio at the same time. And it was like such a moment of, wow, this is what 5 years of hard work gets you. You know, access is the biggest challenge that a photographer has at some point.
So true. So let me ask you about that. Okay, so how many frames are we looking at here?
I think it's 4.
Okay.
Let me
And
think, 3.
so you had to place them
4.
with that, obviously place them with that in mind.
Yeah. So it's, and you can, if you're really eagle-eyed, you can, and I like to be honest about these things.
Yeah.
You can see that it's a composite because it's the same black stool in 3 of the images. And 3 of the people are sitting on the same black stool.
But that would be only you would know that, because it could be 3 similar stools.
Yeah.
But I see, now I see it, right? Interesting.
Yeah. So originally in my head, when we were prepping, I was like, okay, we're going to have them all there, and I'm going to make it as quick as possible for a group picture, and then we'll take the picture. Easy peasy. So then 3 of them showed up. I had them waiting on the side of the set while I photographed other people, because I do like 120 portraits on that night. And then I was like, I have these Apollo astronauts who are being so polite, just sitting there waiting for the other guys to arrive. This can't happen, you know?
Yeah.
This is disrespectful at some point. So I was like, right, I'm going to switch to composite mode. So I just moved back so I could get 1 frame of the whole set. So if you imagine my camera frame is this whole picture.
Yeah.
And I marked a spot on the floor where I would stand. And then I set my camera, I think, to 35 millimeters on my 24 to 70 mil lens.
Okay.
I made sure I remembered the settings, because this is all happening like bap, 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 real quick. And then I squatted down just a tiny bit, and then I remembered how I'd squatted down, because there was no way I was going to set up a tripod.
Yeah.
Because then I'm going to photographing other people again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so throughout the 5-hour night, when I'm photographing lots and lots of portraits and someone coming in every 3 minutes, I just had to remember sort of where I was.
That's pretty amazing. Right there.
Yeah, and you'd think it wouldn't work, but with the help of my the retoucher, and then every time we took one of the groups, so we had like 3 people that we photographed together, and then we'd have another couple turn up. I would have someone put those 2 images together in Photoshop, and so we built it bit by bit as every person turned up, and then you get a composition that works, and that's how I kind of built that setup. But I can't even believe that it worked out.
Well, I'll tell you I think the trickiest part of that is the floor, because you had to get those lines just right. Everything else had to kind of go against the floor, right? I mean, I imagine. And the walls.
Yeah, and that was, and because, I don't know, we marked the spot I was standing with tape, because the key to a good composite is if you had a tripod and you didn't move the tripod, it's almost flawless.
Exactly. That's the easy way, but you're doing it without a tripod, which really amazes me.
Yeah, I honestly, Mark, it was just one of those, I think it was just mind power somehow. Like,
you got to make it go right. Here you are.
I got to make it go right. I have so much trouble when I try to do this, and I do composites not because I can't shoot a group. If I had them all there, it would have been easier, but because sometimes you don't have everyone available at the same time.
Yeah.
If you get into shooting celebrities, you're going to have that problem.
And I think that's a tribute to your flexibility, because, in the world of composites, what's the first lesson? Put it on a tripod. You couldn't do that. So you had to be flexible, but also incredibly precise about it as well. So bravo.
Yeah. I still don't know how it worked.
You did it. And Felix, this has been amazing. Is there any final tip you want to leave our viewers with to help them elevate their photography, advance their photography?
I think if everyone does that little exercise about finding the intersection between what they're interested in and photography. Mm-hmm. And I remember I gave this challenge at a talk that I did for phase 1, and the lady was like, I'm interested in elephants, so how is that gonna apply to my portrait photography? I really love elephants. And I said, what do you love about elephants? She goes, well, their grace and their beauty. And I said, there you go. Find that in your portrait subjects.
That is
it's that kind advice. Yeah, it's that kind of conversation. And if you cannot find it right away, it's okay. That it's a hard thing to find. But what I love about being a photographer is that I can go into different fields. So I got to go on a geologic expedition to Mongolia. I don't want to spend the time getting a PhD in geology, but I love the subject enough to spend 3 weeks on site. And that's a gift as a photographer.
That is fantastic. I agree with you. It allows you and I say this on my show, you get this inside look at people's lives that you never would have had otherwise. And that's the fascinating thing about it.
Yeah.
Felix, thank you again. We will have you back. Thanks again.
Oh, wonderful.
Enjoy
Thank you,
the
Marc.
rest of your
It's
day.
been very fun.
Follow us. Make sure you follow Felix. You saw on his Instagram. Follow me. You'll get updates. Like, subscribe, do all those normal YouTube things. But one other thing, remember to get out and capture your own images of life.